Okay, so I'll have you begin by introducing yourself.
I'm Jen Patterson. I'm the owner of Origami Story Club.
Talk about what Origami Story Club is and how it came to be.
Yeah, so I've taught origami for a long time to neighbor kids and friends. And when the pandemic started, I really missed those kids. And so we started just meeting over Zoom. And the more we did that, the more I realized that it was really, it worked really well. And then I had the idea that I wanted to teach more kids. But I didn't just want to teach anybody or just kids whose maybe parents were real organized or people who had lots of money. I really wanted to reach a population that was special to me. And so I thought about, who that could be and what that might look like, and thought about kids with the body focused repetitive behavior with people that I thought could really benefit from that connection.
So the non proper term that some people might say is like, oh, this child has a tic or something. People don't necessarily know what a body focused repetitive behavior is. Can you talk about what it is and how many children are impacted by it, as well as people from the general population?
Yeah, so most people are familiar with fingernail biting, and that's pretty common, and you'll see it a lot in kids, but also, some people keep that into adulthood. So we're pretty familiar with that. And then the other one that is less known about, but it turns out is really common, is kids and adults also, but will pull out their hair and end up, with maybe patches of, missing spots. And then also picking up their skin. And trying to think, I think it's like 1 in 25 kids, people, but we can translate it to kids, has a body focused repetitive behavior. So like in any classroom, classroom has about 25 kids. There's probably one kid who's struggling with fingernail biting, hair pulling, or skin picking. And everybody grooms, right? Like so it's not just like if you pull one hair, that is the condition, but it's when it's become so ingrained that it's just really difficult to find other ways to deal with discomfort.
And I know you because my own daughter participates in your group, and she happens. I didn't know what it was called, and she has just had a habit of picking at her lip until it bleeds, and then we got a name for it, and then she started going to this group, and it really fit for her. And it seems, I don't know how many kids are in a class. How does the structure work?
Yeah, so I keep the classes really small. Just because, maybe it could be a bigger group, but it's more fun for me if it's a smaller group and we get to know each other. A big part about the condition, especially in adults, is feeling a lot of shame and a lot of secrecy. There's a lot of secrecy around it. So my hope is to connect with kids so that they can not have that long experience of feeling, like they can't talk about it, or like it's so private that they can't seek support or just share their experience. So yeah, I wanted the clubs to be small. So there's about 5 kids is the cap for my clubs. So far, the most I've actually had is 3 in a group, and that's lovely. We can leave our mute off, and people can talk. The structure of the club is it's like about an hour, and we get to slowly know each other. So I like to ask, I especially start with really silly questions, like what's your favorite candy and that kind of thing. And then I just introduce different ideas in the club in the format. So like at first, we start out with our introductions, and then I give them the chance actually right away with the first club to share if they struggle with skin picking or hair pulling. And then there's always the option to pass, and some kids they don't want to talk about it, and other kids are like so excited to meet other kids who have that same challenge. So yeah, we read a story together, and then we fold something out of origami, and we talk a lot. Like I think origami for me, it's the perfect activity because we're keeping our hands busy, but it's also kind of frustrating. And so it gives a lot of opportunity for us as a community, within that group to talk about like, what are we going to do if we get frustrated, or what's going to happen if I don't know how to fold this, and sort of building up that, like, that ability to reach out for support, or how to like deal with the, you know, frustration when things aren't working. And then my hope is the kids get to have mastery of something, you know, so like they work through this challenge, and then at the end they have something that's really cool that they can teach other people and that they can be really proud of.
That's
While at the same time, like, not being ashamed about their skin picking or hair pulling, and maybe even like building up some skills and some ways to cope in different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, and from what I'm learning from like watching from a distance, it seems that the kids have an opportunity to, like, by hanging out with people who have similar challenges, they feel like completely, I don't know, just completely comfortable in a way that maybe they don't in school, for example.
Yeah, it's like really normalizing this thing that I think like a fear, I think some parents could have the fear, like, oh, if I get them in this group with other kids who are doing the same thing, somehow that's gonna like make it okay, or, you know, like it might encourage the behavior, and that's just not the case. It just really seems like the more that they can be comfortable with the challenge, the more able they are to cope with it and to find, you know, find their path through it.
And
Yeah.
this is something that not a lot of people know of, right? We don't think, oh, that person's a nail biter, they must have a BFRB. Unless
Right.
we, you know, we don't know until we know. So what is
Uh-huh.
it that made you personally passionate about helping this population?
Yeah. So let's see, a couple different things. I've struggled with skin picking since I was in my early teens. And I was able to keep it really private. So my parents didn't know that that was something I was struggling with. And it wasn't until I was a parent that I really sought out treatment to figure out how to stop. And and a big part of that process was finding community and finding meeting other people with the same challenge. And then that helped just, again, just bring that shame down. So then it became something I could talk about, and it didn't feel like such a embarrassing secret. And I'm forgetting the other part of your question.
Just like, yeah, what it was that made
Oh
you
yeah.
passionate. So you have the personal connection, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I think, you know, just like, and then I love origami, and I love teaching origami. And my idea with these groups is I didn't want it to be a therapy group where it's like, okay, we're going to come learn some stuff. And, you know, I wanted it to be really fun and really playful and really just about connecting. Um, and I think that that definitely benefits the kids. It also is just so joyful for me. It makes it something that I want to keep doing. And yeah. And then I also, my daughter had a period of time when she was in kindergarten that she had a vocal tick that we got really used to. We didn't even notice it. But when she went to school, her teachers were concerned. And she also was doing some hair pulling. And we took her to the doctor. We didn't know about a BFRB or, you know, hair pulling. And the doctor very kindly said she's perfectly healthy, and referred us to some mental health support that helped get her what she was needing to get through that. So yeah, just for her, it was a short experience that then that changed, and she didn't have that challenge anymore. But I know for a lot of kids, it can be really chronic, and then that dynamic with the parents can be really tough, because, you know, the parents telling them stop doing this, it's like, you know, can be really hard for parents to know how to support their kid through it. So I think being able to be another adult in their lives that can provide some levity while also providing that education and support feels really
And you bring in somebody, you bring in a guest and tell them about it every week. And um I actually, you know,
nice.
like I said, I'm aware that you're on in the household, but I don't watch closely. And then it's been really inspiring for my daughter. She'll like stop during class, like last week during class on a break, she brought out the person that you all talked about who was a CEO of a company. And so she likes to say, like, oh, look, here's this person. And Miss Jen told me about her. And so what's your vision with doing this with them, with introducing them to successful people who also have BFRBs?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, I know for me, first of all, just finding other people on the internet that that were, you know, people that could be role models for me was very exciting, because it's like, this isn't, I feel like with skin picking and hair pulling, it's not something people necessarily tell a lot of other people about. So it was hard to find people. And then when I did, like, it turns out there's some really incredible, everyone I'm thinking of right now, it's all women, these incredible women who have taken that experience and then turned it into this amazing thing. So that was inspiring to me. And then with this group of kids, I was like, gosh, you know, this might be fun to introduce them to other adults. Like, I'm not the only other adult out there who maybe they can look up to in that way. And so, yeah, it's been really fun. And I have I call them the BFRB heroes, and I have them answer some of the same silly questions that our group answers, you know, what's their favorite candy and fruit. But then I'm also asking them, you know, what kinds of things do you like to do to keep your hands busy? Or what do you do for self-care? And do you have pets? And, you know, just things so that the kids can see these other, maybe not only normal people, but extra cool people, you know, that they can look up to. And that feels really good.
Yeah, I think it's really a neat strategy.
Mm.
So for people who don't know what BFRBs are, and I have to keep reminding, because even me, when I say the acronym, even if I have a child who's impacted, behave.
And so it's body focused repetitive behavior.
Thank you. See, I even forgot right now.
And it's so long. I know. I wish it could be a little snappier.
So what would you say to the parent or to the teacher? You know, like, I've encountered that where teachers are saying, like, oh, this child that's going to hurt themselves, I don't want that to happen. How could these other people be an ally to the child who's being impacted by this?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, first of all, educate yourself as much as you can. So there's some great information on the internet. The TLC for BFRBs was an organization that was started by a woman who had trichotillomania, which I feel like more people have heard of that, which is the hair pulling. And so she started this organization, and they do a ton of research. They help connect and train therapists so that, you know, if someone has this condition, they can get to the proper kind of treatment, because, you know, well-meaning, but the improper treatment can be, you know, really tough for families and especially for kids. So making sure, you know, to connect with the right resources. And then I think, you know, the more you're educated about the condition, then the more you can go back to teachers and other adults, even, you know, your own doctor, these kinds of things, to help them understand that the kid isn't choosing, you know, isn't intentionally doing this, that it's something that is very difficult to change. And that distinguishing that it's not self-harm. I think that can be confusing for people, but that it's a different, kind of has a different function. Yeah, so I think just that piece of educating, getting as much information as you can. And then the piece about, it's this weird, you know, the more acceptance and kindness you can offer to someone with a body-focused repetitive behavior, the more it's going to be possible for them to change it. And it's a little counterintuitive, because I think sometimes we think, you know, stop that, like, don't do this, you know, I'm going to kind of step in and tell you what's right. And I think with these behaviors, that doesn't work. It just helps, you know, maybe helps someone keep it more secret.
Yeah. So I think that's an important distinction that you just made, helping people see it not as self-harm.
Yeah.
Although it sounds like incidentally we could self-harm, but that's not the goal, right? Can you talk about, like, what is it? Like, more of a coping strategy, perhaps?
Yeah. I can't speak for everyone, but I'll speak from my own experience. For me, it's really about distress tolerance. Like, I, you know, feel some kind of discomfort, and then before I can even think about it, my first thing is to go, right now it happens to be my back as a place that I go to start to feel, are there spots? And so, and then that process is comforting to me. And I can describe this whole thing now, but if you'd asked me 10 years ago to help you understand what it was, I would say, I don't know, this just happens, so now I understand, oh, okay, I need comfort right now. If I start to do that. So for example, as I'm talking to you, I have this little rubbery thing that I'm playing with my hands. I just need to keep them busy. I keep this little tangle toy.
We have that one.
Do you? This is a good one. And so I think for me, and I think this with most people, it's finding other ways to comfort myself, what ways that fit for who I want to be and, to take care of myself. So like in my car, on my desk, by my nightstand, I always have a thing of lotion, just anything I can do to comfort myself. So I think it's a lot less about stopping the picking or pulling and more about adding support. And so I think that would be the thing for families, to help a child is really what support can we add? And it's not rewarding rewarding it. It's just providing the support that child needs. And for different kids for different people, right? It's all different kinds of things that they might need. But in my case, it's definitely about that self-soothing.
Cool. Yeah. And I've noticed, as I've also had to get educated, sometimes, it's a little anxiety provoking when somebody might see their child bleeding or something. And so then I'll say, well, what could we do? Like, we'll actually collaborate on like, what should we do if we're concerned? And she'll say, well, I'm thinking you could let me know that you're a little worried about me, or you could ask me if I'd like to do something else. And so do you recommend maybe collaborating with the person who has it, or?
I think it's brilliant. I think it's kind of separate in the behavior from the person, it's like, let's work together on this thing, let's like, I think I really like that strategy. And it's asking the kid, like, what do you think, what do you think would be helpful? Or how would you like me to help? Which I think it makes so much sense, but it can be really hard as a parent. I know for me, I want to know what to do, and I want to like be there for my kid. And I think to take that little step back to ask them, what do you think could be helpful? Because then that gets them in that mindset also, right? Like maybe they haven't really thought about that. And now suddenly they're thinking, gosh, what could be helpful? So I think even if their ideas aren't necessarily like the final answer, it's creating that relationship with each other about like, how can we work with this thing that's happening? Yeah, I like your strategy.
Oh, it's not like it came easily. Like, I'm telling you, I've done those same things that you spoke about where you're like, oh no, don't, please.
Right.
Work. Yeah.
There's also the other thing I think is really key. I'm a facilitator. The TLC has really great family support groups. And I think that's key, because I think as a parent, to have a safe place to say, oh my gosh, this is upsetting, or, to really be able to talk about how you're feeling is really important, so that you can come back to your kid in that calm, confident way. I think that kind of support is really key as well.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you a question kind of specific to these times, which now we're almost a year in. By these, I mean pandemic times. And then, there's so many things going on in our world.
Yeah.
Including a change of leadership, which I'll take that.
Yes.
But I'm wondering if you could talk about, and some of this might be speculative, but kind of your perspective about how children who experience things like BFRBs might be particularly hit during a pandemic, and what you're noticing about the people that you work with.
Oh, gosh. I think that I've so many people I've met. I've got to go to a conference back in West Virginia for the TLC has a conference every year. So I've met a lot of people there, and then all the kids I've got to work with. And my general experience is these kids and adults are really, really sensitive people. And when I say like sensitive in the best sense, people who are really kind, really thoughtful, really observing. And so I think that's, it's like a superpower and a kryptonite, and I wouldn't want to get rid of that sensitivity that I have. But boy, it takes a lot. And I think a lot of skills and a lot of support to navigate that, to make it a strength. And yeah, the pandemic just, for so many people, it's just created so much isolation, so much time to think instead of just doing. It's like sitting around thinking is not the way to get through these disorders. It's really about action and about, movement. And so I think especially for kids, who aren't getting those chances to go out and run on the playground with their friends and, burn that energy, I think that's, it seems extra hard. And I think the peer connection is extra important right now at a time when they're not, they're getting so much less of that. So yeah, so it worked out for me because of this, that I've been able to, offer these groups. And so I'm so glad for that, because it's also given me a really great focus, and given me, something to not just sit around and think about, kind of navel gaze. It's really good in that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I think the silver lining, if the challenge is what you're speaking about in terms of the isolation and all the other challenges that we have, right? Where every day is kind of the same in some ways. But the silver lining has been, we can tune into your class and you're in another state and we can just hop online and join. And I think your students are from across the country. Is that right?
Yeah. So the group is, that particular group is California, Connecticut, I'm in Oregon, and someone's in Toronto, Canada. And we're all able to have this time together and really know each other. I mean, it's really special to have that connection. I didn't know it was possible before this. Yeah.
So what do you think is the most important thing that you're going to take away from, plowing through as these challenging times? As I'm going to call you a caregiver in some ways, because you're doing this very nurturing thing that seems to really help people. At least that's my perspective. But yeah, what do you think?
I think no matter where we are in our lives, there's always something we can do for others. And I think in that process, in finding whatever that is for a person, that's where a lot of healing can happen, and a lot of health, when we realize, even if it's something so small that we can do for another person, that can just give a lot of meaning, even when it's really hard to find meaning and purpose. And so I think that's been my takeaway, just how being able to do these groups has just brought me so much joy and so much connection, and gets my mind off stuff that I'm worried about, when I'm spending that time, and I get to feel really helpful. And so I think that's my biggest takeaway.
So you hadn't done these groups virtually prior to the pandemic?
No, I'd done one Zoom meeting I'd never even done Zoom. Yeah.
So is it something you'll consider continuing?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's definitely something I want to continue. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the piece of it that's pretty exciting. Like, we can go to a origami class in Oregon, or we can go to a conference in another country, and we would have just not thought about it before, right?
No, not even an option. I mean, and even like with this population, I wouldn't have. I mean, the idea sounds really cool, but when would I even see those kids, or how would we connect? And it's like, oh my gosh, we're doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, the hidden silver lining and the opportunities we're discovering. And so then, before I let you go, I'm wondering if you could offer listeners and our viewers, if we use this in both formats, tips on how they can really be allies to people, not only children, but people impacted by BFRBs.
Yeah. Get good information, learn what you can about them. Stay really curious, because for every person, it's different. And so staying curious and being willing to ask questions. I think being able to, everybody has something that they would like to do better at in their life, I think. And so maybe trying to make that connection, what is the thing I wish I could do different? Oh, that's what this is like for them. And so trying to, just remember that we don't choose what our challenges are. And so keeping that perspective and just staying curious and create space for conversation.
And to the person listening to this interview who might think, oh, that sounds familiar to me, maybe that's something that I've been dealing with, but I've never talked about it, what do you recommend to them?
Yeah, two different websites. The TLC for BFRBs is a spectacular place to start. And then I also, for skin pickers specifically, there's an organization called the Picking Me Foundation. And their founder had such a severe skin picking disorder that she was hospitalized with, some major wounds. And she is an incredible leader and incredible advocate. And so I think connecting with both those organizations, and then in that process, finding support groups to connect with other people. And there's so many lovely people that I've been able to connect with, and people that are really interesting and dynamic. And it's been a real confidence builder for me to see that there's lots of really great people that happen to have this struggle.
That's awesome. Anything else you'd like to add before we conclude?
Oh, I'm so glad to be able to share about this. And I think for people that do have a BFRB, that just remembering that it doesn't have to define you, and that it's definitely something that you can learn about. And there's so many ways to be in recovery and to heal and to move through the challenge. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Oh, thank you, Sharon.